I'm fully loaded here. I have water, and I've got coffee, and I've got chocolate milk. So I can take anything. I'll move through the topic today quickly enough that we'll have time for some questions afterwards. It's not up behind me, but my cell, most of you have my cell, right? 705-768-2214, the bat line. If you want to text questions during the message or afterwards, or just stick up a hand. We're doing 2 weeks on this topic. It's a big topic. It's one easily you could do 10 weeks on. But this fall, lot of, as some of you know, I go to Starbucks once in a while, and I started just running into friends that I have there, people inside the church and out, and kind of a theme that's dominant is married couples kind of struggling a little bit. And so this kind of kept right through Christmas, and I thought we need to put some in. So I had a 2-week window between some of our other topics, and so I wanted to take a couple weeks and we'll do a tweak. At some point we'll do a broader series on relationships. A couple things Canadian society to be aware of. One, half of all adults in Canadian society are single right now, whether through divorce or they haven't married yet. People are putting off marriage longer, and some choose to live together, or some just don't find somebody they want to be with, and so they put off marriage a lot longer. And then people who do get married are leaving each other more often than maybe it was the case 40 or 50 years ago. And there are different reasons why couples come apart. Sometimes there's abuse, sometimes there's just conflict, sometimes there's family issues, sometimes there's historical issues. All these kind of things lean into it. And I want to talk to our divorcees here and tell you, I totally want you to be embraced fully by God's grace. Marriage is not easy for anybody, and the fact that you have had a marriage come apart does not mean you're done. Okay? It doesn't mean that you will never be with anyone, or you don't have a happy marriage in front of you. It doesn't necessarily mean you're broken or anything like that. We all have issues, and if you've been part of a marriage that's come apart, well, let's just say on behalf of the church and Jesus Christ, we love you, and we all fail in many ways. Okay? So you guys don't feel as I'm talking about marriage. It was interesting when we first started the church. I did a series on marriage, and at that time we had about 20 or 30 divorcees in the congregation. In fact, most of the people in the congregation were divorcees that were on second or third marriages, and I felt really bad for them until a couple of them came to me and said, "Look, preach it, because if we had heard this stuff earlier, then maybe we wouldn't have got in trouble. So please don't, on our account, hold back." Okay, so I've taken that philosophy since then. But being single does not make you less of a person. Okay, it doesn't. You don't get married to become a complete person. You get married because God designed marriage as a place where two people of very different backgrounds can learn how to love each other in the most intimate terms. And God sees this as sacred. Jesus affirmed the Mosaic law. A man will leave his father and his mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. The idea that when God sees two people choose to get married, when they become one flesh, God actually sees them as one person. The word for one there is the same word the Bible uses to describe the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. When we worship God, we understand that He is three persons but one. How the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit share essence. They've been in relationship from the depths of eternity. Neither of the three was created. They have always existed, always will exist. They're all powerful, all knowing. They're everywhere at once. We understand that of God. God looks at a marriage and says the same oneness that the Trinity experiences is in my heart for a couple to share. And then the oneness, the idea of a church, that a body of believers, people who love Jesus Christ, would come together and we would share essence. It's really interesting. In the book of Revelation, John the Apostle addresses different churches. He specifies some individuals, but the most part he says, to the church in Philadelphia, the church in Laodicea, he discusses them. When he looks at us, he sees a oneness that we all share, even though we come from radical differences. So this is a special thing. It's not a contract. It's not a piece of paper. When someone gets married, it has eternal and everlasting implications for who that person is. And it was designed to be so. Second thing about Canadian society I want to emphasize is the value system of Canadians is always changing. Some people identify it by generations, and that generally can be true. But one of the things that lends itself right now to why marriage is particularly hard for most of us is the value system that is becoming prevalent in Canada right now. If someone was born in the 1930s or 40s, or went through the Great Depression, the value of Canadians during that time was community. It was family. It was community. Why? Because when you're dirt poor and you don't have enough, the only way they got through the Depression is they depended on other people. Family was first. I hear people from that generation, we didn't have much, but we had each other. Ever hear anybody say that? Yeah, we didn't have much, we had each other. So community and relationship was very important to that generation. And later on, the baby boom generation came along, and that in Canada, the baby boom, the difference between them and the generation after is most dramatic. There are more baby boomers in Canadian per capita than most of the other developed G7 countries. And to baby boomers, the new value system became success. Because it's such a large generation that it was possible for a lot of people to make money or to build really big things a little easier because you had such a large market. In fact, when the baby boom generation was emerging, we had in the church, we had the new occurrence, the idea of a mega church. Up to that point, international churches that would garner international attention, had 1,000 people. Now, there's churches 20, 30, 40,000 people in the States. There's churches in South Korea. One of them has 750,000 people in it. Another has 400,000. There's a church in India that has 200,000 people in it. One church. And it's got all these people, and they're all connected to that one church. So the success. And the generation after that, the generation we call the baby bust, which isn't really a nice name. That's my generation. I kind of feel bad about that because I'm not a bust. I'm a great guy. But the baby bust, we had a different value system. To us, our value system, the most important, valuable resource to us was time. We don't like to waste time. We like keeping our options open so we have the most time. We work to provide quality time for ourselves to find meaning. Time is the most valuable resource. My generation was the one where the pastor would get up and say, I need a volunteer. And we'd say, nah, I'm not signing up for that. I'm not joining that membership. I'm not signing on with that political party. We just held back and kept our options open because time was of the utmost value. And the more time you had available, the richer you felt. Okay? Well, there's a new value system that's coming on. It affects all generations, but the new value system, does anybody want to guess what it is? What is the most valuable resource, if you had to guess? Right now, is anybody? Wi-Fi. Pardon me? Wi-Fi. That's pretty hot. That's pretty up there. Someone else. What is the most valuable? Information? Yeah, that's part of it. Anybody else want to carry a guess? Gracie?
The next technological device.
The next technological device? Yeah. There's all these kind of things. Actually, the most valuable value system, or the thing that is valuable right now to millions of Canadians, is your individual values and freedom. Okay? To many, many Canadians, particularly younger Canadians, being an individual, being unique, having your freedom of choice and values and all those things are the most valuable resource. A lot of them, my generation, go to school so you make lots of money so you can have more time, right? A lot of these guys look at school and they go, it's really expensive. I think I'll travel instead. Or, they'll go to school, but they don't really land anywhere because they're kind of, maybe a bit of this, bit of that. You don't know what you're going to do because careers change so quickly. But that individual value has lent itself to something that is straining marriages and making marriages less tenable. Does anybody want to know why? Why would that value system lend itself to struggles in marriage? You're kind of more focused on yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Me. I'm first, right? Michael?
Kind of hard to meld two individuals when you don't value taking on the other values.
Yes. Yeah. When your value system is more about yourself than it is about giving yourself to another person, it can be a real strain on it. Yeah, Joe?
I find that a lot of younger people aren't committed or accountable. Like
They don't want to get locked into that? Yes.
It's like, I'll just do what I can so I can play.
Yes, we don't like to be accountable. Yes, yeah. It can lend itself to a real fickleness. Now, there's advantage to it. There are advantages to this. Anytime I see a value system in Canadian society, there is a benefit and there's a challenge. And that happens every generation. Everybody, it tends to be as you get older, you look at younger, oh, they're way worse than we were. Yeah, right. People have been saying that for thousands of years, right? They're just like us. They have their own struggles in that. The value of it is when people want to develop themselves, the idea of learning and the idea of growing as a person has become really valuable, and that's good. And also the value of choice. People are making better choices, because I can remember a time in the 70s where cults were everywhere. And you had these cults where people would join, and by the time they drank the Kool-Aid, quite literally in Jim Jones' case, people were not individual enough. They went collectively along and basically like lemmings flew over a cliff, right? So that has been replaced by people maybe a little more cynical, but also a little more guarded about who they put their trust in. The second thing is the devaluing of success and the worship of time are less so with this value system. So it means this value system, this couple, they're looking for mentorships. They're really hungry to connect with people. So moving on to marriage. I'm just going to cover a couple of things. I want to focus on a verse from the book of James. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God's desire. We talked about in the scriptures there's gender neutral. When it says man, it was addressed mostly to men. And when you were talking about humankind, you talked mankind. That was just some of the language of that. So when it says man, it means men, women, children, old, young, all those kind of things, okay? So the writer of this is James is saying, here's how we should interact with each other, and this has timeless truths for marriage. The first one is this, is that we should stop to listen carefully. Stop to listen carefully. This approach to conversation and to a married couple or even a friendship is this. Stephen Covey wrote years ago, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Fantastic book. And one of his things is seek first to understand before you're understood. Now, he was talking about it in a business sense, but this actually is a relational sense. What is it this person who is talking to me or is disagreeing with me, why do they think the way they do? See, too often, when Krista and I are discussing something that gets heated, or we're discussing something with anybody or a lot of married couples, what we do is we lock into positions, okay? And positions that drive, make us angry. It tends to be anger is all about debt. Anger is about you owe me or I deserve this, right? And so you get angry when you think something you value is being taken away from you. Well, a lot of times the temptation for couples when they start to spat is to take up a position and fortify. Would you agree with that? Okay? This is what I want. This is what you want. And the only solution is either I win 100% or you win 100%, right? And we take up positions. Being a good listener allows us to erode those forts and those positions where you go, okay, I'm going to wander over into your fort. And I want to totally understand what you're thinking and ask intelligent questions and active listen, okay? So my wife is half German, half French, which means she's always right. She's very passionate about it. So for me to go into her fort, that's okay. I got Scottish roots, but way worse. For me to go into her fort, okay, means that I need to listen and understand, ask intelligent questions, and get down to the meaning of it. This can be incredibly disarming for people. Right over there, when I worked in the accounting office, I remember doing finance, few things that people get really squirrely about. One is finance, two is their kids, and three is religion. Any of those topics people get really weird about. So one of them was money, and so we had students coming and paying tuition. And a lot of times, it was during the really bad recession in the early 90s, people would come pretty worked up when they came and had to pay tuition and, analyzing costs of stuff. So I learned a really valuable lesson. When someone came and they were heated up, we had like this little circle, it was like a fishbowl. I'd come out of the office. I'd come around and stand. I wasn't too worried about getting beat up. I'm a pretty big guy. So I'd come around. I wouldn't stand head on with them. I would stand to the side and I would listen to them. And it's really interesting. If someone is upset about something, once they get it all out, it's like all the steam comes out of the argument because you're listening to them. Now, occasionally I had a coworker, if I was having a bad day, I would take up a position and then you're just fighting. And then you would just, win or lose, and it just created conflict, lasted forever. So I found taking the 5 minutes to listen to what someone had to say and understand it and come around to it. I may not have to agree with them, but at least understanding it and repeating it back to them, people get to this place where all of a sudden there's a pause. Most people, some people just talk repeatedly, but most people come to a pause. And it was often at that point I could interject. What I used to do then is I tried to take more venom out of the wound. I would say, okay, let me get this straight. And I explained it back to them and I'd ask clarifying questions until I absolutely knew what it is they're objecting to. And then I always tried to find a win-win. I'd say, well, here's something I need to happen, and I think you know that needs to happen. You do need to pay to go to school. We're not giving it for free, right? Okay. But here's what we can do. Here's 2 or 3 options, and then allow that person to talk. A lot of times, those conflicts created actually very good friendships. And with a lot of students, I just developed a close connection with them because someone took the time to listen to them. And everywhere they go in life, it tended to be people weren't listening, including their own parents, a lot of times shut them out, and they never had anybody listen to them. As a married couple, a lot of times, we grade on each other a little bit. Like we're different, right? Men and women are different. I'm not going to say how, okay? Because it tends to be you say, men are like this. Somebody always knows a woman that's like that, and vice versa, okay? It tends to be there's a lot of neutrality that way, and a lot of gender roles have changed over the years and that. But men and women are different. They just tend to have different physiological, psychological things that are different. Secondly, tends to be people, birth orders, marry different. Tends to be firstborns marry babies, or secondborns, and secondborns marry firstborns, and every once in a while you get a couple middle children get married. That's scary. A couple, those kind of things. But it tends to be the birth order, and it tends to be firstborns are very uptight and like to do things right, and babies or secondborns are pretty loosey-goosey and are about having the party, right? And it just tends to be birth order, because by the time the secondborn or the baby is born, the parents don't care anymore. Right? And they just let them run wild because they know how, where the lines are and all that kind of, but the firstborn, they're all, okay, take his temperature. It's gone down 1/4 degree. Let's call a merge, and you're bringing them in like you're just uptight about everything. And the kid picks up on that and they kind of become uptight. But, the babies, well, it tends to be very rarely you get 2 firstborns married. You always get this kind of combination. My wife is birth order number 1. I'm birth order number 4. Like, we're talking about different galaxies as far as things, She's like, we need a plan, we need a list, we need all this. And I'm like, isn't the sky pretty today? It's just a different world, right? Okay? So that's different. Sexes are different. That's different. Generations are different. Some of us come from different ethnic backgrounds, all these kind of things. And I always teach young married couples that are getting married, I always teach them this statement and make sure they burn it on their brains. God made you different, and that's a good thing. And a lot of you are saying, what? Are you crazy? No. God made you different, and that's a good thing. You love somebody who always does what you want? That's easy. You love somebody who's being a total jerk? That's graduate level loving. And if the fact that your spouse is so different is actually the way God designed it. You're saying, but they drive me crazy. Of course, that's the point. What do you think it's like when God loves you in your fickleness, in your twistedness, and your back and forth and all that? You don't think we're ever a little frustrating to love? but he lavishes grace on us. So when you are married to someone, the fact that they're different, the fact that they put the toilet paper roll in the wrong way or they squeeze the toothpaste from the wrong place, like, I don't understand any of that, man. Just put the roll on and whatever way it goes, up, down, all around, I don't care. As long as it's there, you know. You grow up in a family of 5, the fact that there is toilet paper is a really big deal, okay? So you get all these kind of conflict and all these kind of things. It's important we become good listeners, not only with our spouse, but in life. Do you know why we talk up? Do you know why we're always trying to get a word in? Why we're always getting the word out in that? Is because we're insecure. When I'm into myself, and we all struggle with this, I'm always waiting for the person to open up so I can tell them something about me. And I'm not really listening to them. You're in a conversation, they're telling you about how their uncle, fell out of the hayloft, and you can't wait because you want to tell the story about the time the dog ran, the tractor ran over the dog or something. You know what I mean? Like, you always have a story. And some people are famous one-uppers. Everyone knows, no matter what you say, they're going to find a bigger story. I hate people like that. But anyways, I probably am one of those. But yeah, to be a good listener is a rare and precious trait, and is a good foundation for marriage. Second thing, guard your words faithfully. James writes, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. One famous quote, an author says that I've never gotten into trouble for something I chose not to say, right? Abraham Lincoln said, it's better to sit quietly and thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. There's a few ones. There is a time to speak. There's a time to speak up. Tell the truth in love. The scriptures are open about that. There is a time to speak. But to speak slowly, to take a moment and pause and think about what the person, first of all, diffuses the situation. It brings everything down a certain level. And you can speak slowly. If you're talking quickly and yelling, nobody's listening. And the only time you should do that is when the house is on fire, okay? Other than that, you're in a conversation with someone, speak slowly. Do you know why a lot of us struggle with this? Is we have so many distractions. We've got our phones buzzing, we've got our TV on, we've got the kids running around and all that. If you get in a conflict with someone, it's worth taking the time and turning off the devices and focusing in on that individual to work through it. People are more important than things. And you may say, oh, but all my friends need me, or all this. You know what? Jesus was approachable. He wasn't always accessible. And you don't have to be either. Anybody could approach Jesus. He was very open to that. But he wasn't always accessible. Sometimes he had huge crowds gathered. They all wanted a piece of him. They all wanted all this kind of things. He'd say to his disciples, let's blow this scene. And he would take off across the lake and leave them all. And they were like, you want to be famous. You need all these people. He said, no, it's important I spend time with the Father. It's important I spend time with you. He wasn't always accessible, but he was always approachable. Okay? So we should stop and listen carefully. A proverb says, a fool finds no pleasure in understanding, but delights in airing his own opinions. So here's God's rules for fighting fair. Let's go on to guard your words faithfully. Here's some tips for it. Never call each other names. Right? Never raise your voice. Never get historical. Notice I didn't say hysterical, historical. Never use never and always language. Never threaten divorce. Some people, they start a fight off and the first thing is, I might be leaving. What does that do? It just places everything in an enormous conflict and in a complex kind of thing. If you're leading with divorce, you have serious attachment issues. Okay? In fact, to have that discussion at all in your marriage over and over and over again, if this keeps coming out, make an agreement with each other. Just do away. Let's kill the D word. Write it in big block letters on a piece of paper. Take it out in your backyard and light it on fire. Okay? If you have the opinion and if you work with your spouse and you're absolutely committed to, we will make this work, chances are you're probably going to make it work. Okay? But if the D word's coming out all the time, then that's scary. And then this one's very important. Never quote your pastor during a fight, okay? Because I'm not having it. Occasionally I'll have a married couple and one will approach me and that they're playing ping pong with the pastor. It's not going to work for me, okay? All right, the third one. then we'll take time for some questions. God's rules for fighting fair. Handle your anger righteously. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. Now, there are times we should get angry. Okay? There's times that we should get angry. Sometimes when we see injustice, maybe we do need to get a little angrier about it. Some of the things in Canadian society where we see people oppressed, a casino opens up and all your people that can't afford it are in there and they're spending money and there's addiction and that's feeding the government through taxes, all this kind of thing, and you watch people struggling, families fall apart and stuff. That should tick us right off, right? We should get angry about stuff like that. We should get angry when people are oppressed. We should get angry credit card companies show up at college, university campuses where kids don't even have jobs and they're already trying to lasso them with debt. That should really make us angry, okay? And there's times as a couple, you're going to grate on each other's nerves. You're going to get angry. The choice you have is, what will I do with the anger? Now, my family is historically famous for anger issues, okay? My father was a frustrate, hit, okay? That's what he was. My mom was a frustrate, scream, okay? And so we had these kind of historical, blow-ups, it was just like calm and then all of a sudden, kaboom, lightning and thunder and all those kind of things. People losing their heads. And so I'm very familiar with this, and what I've learned over the years through a good deal of good Christian counseling, study in Scripture, prayer, and personal development, and the accountability of some really good friends, is that it's not good to blow your top. It took me a while to figure out, but it's not good to blow your top. What is important is that you measure anger by saying, why am I angry? A lot of times, you're getting angry long before you blow up. And a lot of people don't do anything about it. They just leave it. Right? And they bury it, and then it comes out, and then you end up saying or doing things that are so hurtful. Anger needs to be dealt with as it comes. And so you got to go, okay, I'm angry. Why am I angry? Am I right to be angry? Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Psychologists talk about the trouble we get in when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Halt, What's going on? Am I just hungry? Am I frustrated? What do I think is being taken away from me? Why is this person making me angry? Why do I think they're out to get me? Or quite legitimately, what's going on that is making me angry? Maybe this is a justified thing, but I need to deal with it in a healthy way. Anger will happen. Anger is universal. The question is, what are you going to do with it? And to keep your head and to have a slow anger that's developed. Okay? And I'm not talking about passive-aggressive ways. Some people are passive-aggressive. They're just always angry. They're a wet blanket, kind of like Debbie Downer from Saturday Night Live, People will be having a party and all that. She come in the room, say something totally bummer, and some people are like that, okay? They're passive-aggressive. You're sitting down talking to them, and they're just heavy. They're just sucking the life right out of you and all those kind of... That's not a healthy way to deal with anger either. Anger needs to be expressed. It needs to be worked through. It needs to be dealt with. But anger is something you choose to do. 4 signs we aren't fighting fair. First one, criticizing. If we find we're constantly picking at people. Second one, contempt. They did a study where they took a bunch of married couples, had them in a room, and in this study, before they even asked them a question, they could take the two and put them together each other in 5 minutes, know whether they were going to be together in 5 years or not. You know what they saw? The emotion they saw that normally indicated that marriage was in trouble was contempt. Contempt. They could tell from the body language, look on the face, the way the person reacted to the other person, they could recognize contempt. If you are contemptuous to your spouse, if you look at them and you just hate everything about them, then there's a serious heart issue there. Okay? And you may say, well, they're pathetic, they're a loser, they never do anything right, they drink too much, they do all this kind of thing. Do you know what? They're a human being made in God's image, and He loves them so much He was willing to send His Son to die for them. Everyone is worth a priceless reward from God. Okay? So yes, they may have their issues. Yes, they may need to be dealt with them and all that. But there's no way anybody has placed you in the place where you're God and they're not. Okay? So grace, overwhelming grace. When we understand grace, how it comes, we understand grace, how to give. Defensiveness, just where we're always on guard and we're always trying to protect, we're in our fort. Or stonewalling, we just don't allow anything to get resolved and we just carry things on and all those kind of things. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So there, I walked through some points of conflict, probably not covered half of it, but does anybody have any questions? I've made sure we got a good 10 minutes here for Q&A. Scotty, you got the mic? Mike, ask a question. Well, whatever's in your pointy little head. Come on. Question or comment? You got anything?
Marriage is hard.
Yes.
And a lot of people, especially my generation, I won't speak for anyone older or younger than me, but a lot of people in my generation don't like putting effort into things.
Yeah.
Into anything.
Yes.
Whether it's work or personal development or relationships. It's just, it takes too much effort, they quit.
Yes.
And they might quit by getting divorced, or they might quit by just not acting married anymore.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put effort into a relationship that requires effort, but that's what you decided to do.
Yes. Yes. That's good. It is good. It's true, right? We give up too easy on things. Someone else, questions or comments? Over here. Hi, Dougie. You were my next one.
Yeah, so you're specifically talking about conflict with spouses, between spouses, right?
Yes.
So when that is coming up, one of the things that I've found is effective is if you pray about it, right? So, you know what, you find yourself arguing, we better just take a time out here and pray about it.
Yeah.
It's hard to be selfish when you're praying.
Yeah.
And not suddenly start looking for the best outcome for you both, rather than just winning an argument.
Yeah.
Which I find, I can become all about just winning the argument.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent. What's the statistic? The divorce rate goes from 50% to 1% in lives of couples that pray together. That is not a made-up statistic. If you pray together, probably a chance you're going to stay together. Yet this is one real interesting one, because couples struggle with this a lot. They really do. And a lot of times I find, I'm not going to generalize too much, but one of the couple will say, it's their responsibility to be the spiritual leader. They're the ones that need to do it. I'm not doing it. Kind of thing. Hey, listen, you can both instigate. You're a human being. We're Canadians. We're all equal, right? We'll celebrate our individuality. So there's nothing to stop you from going to your spouse or at the beginning of a conflict to say, begin with, let's pray. Because you're right. What it does is take the focus off your own selfishness and instead throwing yourself at the feet of a God who loves us by grace. And that changes everything. So pray. Don't pray, talking about what a rotten person you're married to, and can you please give me enough grace to listen to their stupid ideas? Not that kind of thing, but pray humbly, right? Ask God to soften your hearts and for you to come to an understanding. I tell young married couples, I say, you'll never accomplish this at first, but can there ever be a conflict where you're sitting having a disagreement and you're holding hands and you start and end with prayer? And you're holding hands, you're not holding on so you can beat on the person, right? Okay, you're holding hands. And that, they're like, that could never happen. Well, is there ever a place where you get to a place of understanding where you're on each other's side enough that you can work through conflict and do it? Counselors will teach us the best conflicts are the ones you nip in the bud. They're about 3-4 minutes long. Those are the best conflicts. Some people are still working on 4 or 5 hours. We had a text come in. Someone said, how do you let your spouse know that you're unhappy with how they spend so much time ignoring you and your kids? No matter what you try, the spouse feels they don't need to change, and everything at home, including the kids, are only your responsibility. Great question. Great question. I have no idea. No, just kidding. That individual thing comes into play that tends to make us selfish. Okay? But there is, in every married couple, the ability to turn up the heat a little bit in the sharing of things. Okay? I don't mean turning the heat up and you're going to make their life a living hell, but at least to ask for help and to have a serious discussion. Sometimes these issues are big enough that a third party is needed. Okay? To sit down with a counselor, lay your ideas. Most people, when they go into marital counseling, they think, I'll just tell my side and they're going to side completely with me. And no marriage counselor worth their salt will do that. Tends to be, they'll sit down with both of them and say, okay, here's how far you need to come, here's how far you need to come, let's meet in the middle and form a partnership. It's not about winning and losing, it's a partnership. It sounds like one individual is checked out of the relationship and is leaving the other with all kinds of the responsibility. They're not carrying their load, okay? And the Bible talks about those who are not carrying their load. If you do not work, you should not eat, right? So stop making them dinner. Just kidding. Look for ways to communicate. First of all, pray. Say, God, how can I do this? Then sit down with the individual and say, here is what I'm struggling with. Can we sit down and have a game plan? If the person refuses, you then say, I'd like to go see someone about it. You bring a third counselor in, okay? And then if that's not working, then you form a network. You go, okay, if my spouse is not interested in helping with the kids and not helping what can I form? Can I form a network? Can my mom help with the kids? Can these kind of things? And then I've got to make some serious choices because I need a little bit of time for me. I need a little bit of fulfillment, and maybe I like to take a course and all those kind of things. There's ways to communicate those things, okay? What ends up happening a lot of time is we get angry and resentful and the marriage starts to disintegrate and starts to come apart, okay? If the person is not willing to work with you, I guarantee you there are probably 2,000 or 3,000 things you can do to address that. You just need to sit and be creative and listen, okay, to what you need to do, and then work towards that. And then maybe you're married to someone where this is a grave deficiency. Maybe they're good at A, B, C, they're great, and this one, they're really bad. You know, and maybe the heart to heart where you're saying to them, say, you know what, you're missing your kids growing up. Like, they don't know you, all those kind of things. And if they choose to resent that or to stand away from that and not be a part of that, they lose. They really do, because they're going to lose a lot of the relationship and connection that they could have had with that. I've sat down with so many people, you know, they're nearing their last days, and they said, I just spend no time with my kids, or, you know, I was always at the office, or I never appreciated the wife I had, or, you know, all those kind of things. Regret is a huge issue for people that come to the end of it. Pray, though, and work with that person as much as you can. And then when you get to that point where you say, okay, I'm bringing in support for me, and I'm doing these things, I've tried the counseling, I've tried all that, this person is not changing, I've got a choice to make. Is this a person, you know, can I weigh the good and the bad and say, okay, I got to give A, B, C, and that. How can you make this marriage work? But you do not need to kill yourself. Some people become martyrs in that situation. And you know what? There's always help. There's always help you can get. And that may not be what you wanted to hear, but that's sometimes the way you need to go. It's funny, though, too. A lot of people, when you start empowering and helping yourself a little bit, it actually inspires the other person to get more involved. The person that the person will continually rip off is the one that does nothing and sits here and feels sorry for themselves, right? Empower yourself. Find ways to address this. Say, okay, if I haven't got a spouse that's going to take care of my kids, what can I do? Who can I call upon? Maybe I can be part of a babysitting, group that shares and those kind of things. Scotty, anybody else? Good question? Yes, Grace.
This is not exactly marriage, but it's related.
Mm-hmm.
How do you address the kind of hookup culture of, I'm just going to have some fun?
Yeah.
And that's all that really matters. Have you got any suggestions?
Well, Grace, I've
There's a lot
been
of
meaning to
people
talk to you about that. It's time to repent of your wild and carousing ways. Shelley, you won the card, so get it. You can get it from me afterwards. You remember how we talked? There's always a positive and a negative to different value systems. Internet dating right now is just the rage, right? And a lot of internet stuff is for hookups. People just want to get together and have a good time, okay? We know, as followers of Jesus Christ, that we want to work towards a permanent relationship. Hookups do not satisfy the soul and provide the intimacy that we really need. We are meant to be with one person, one soulmate that we're married and that we stay married to and follow that through. But in our culture, it's become quite the rage for internet dating and all these kind of things. I don't think internet dating is actually a bad thing. Okay? Some people are like, oh, it's so negative, there's so much of this. There's a lot of bad stuff on it to avoid. But for some people, it used to be, I need to meet a girl, I'll go to church, which is, I think, the best, But if you don't meet anybody at church, it used to be, well, let's go to the bars. Well, most people know the bars are not a great place to find a spouse, right? Okay? I'm sorry, some of you might have hooked up that way, but it's not necessarily a good way. Well, now, internet dating is trying to find compatible ways to bring like-minded people together. They're kind of a safe, you can examine and all those kind of things, find out about a person or whatever. And if they're done carefully, aren't the end of the world, okay? There's all kinds of nightmares out there, should be avoided and all those kind of things. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying, if you think it's out of the picture, because you think it's new, it's weird, then that's fine. Don't be a part of it. But if you're a part of it, do not feel guilty about it. I've seen some wonderful coupling come out of this where people meet and get married and settle down in that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Just you need to be really careful with it. You really need to go in it with the wisdom of a serpent and the innocence of a dove and really evaluate it. Get lots of input for those who know you and are around you. Meet the person, do it in safe terms, find out what you need to find out and all those kind of things. Just be careful about it. There's lots of tips out there about how to meet someone, but that's not the end of the world. Hookups, the idea of getting together for intimacy is kind of a rage, and it might be something some of us here are utilizing. Some people who are married utilize it, and the idea of getting together with people. The only thing I can say is the intimacy you're craving cannot be found that way. It just can't. And what you want is someone to delight in you and love you. And a hookup is an easy way out. Sometimes when I'm thirsty, I'll feel like cracking a can of Coke and, drinking it right down, which will make me feel really good for the short term. But in about an hour, the caffeine crash comes in and the sugar crash and all those kind of things. If I drink Coke every day, I'm probably going to shorten my life. That's what hookups are. They actually work against our ability to be intimate with people in a normal way, okay? So if you find your hookups are consistently internet pornography, or if you're hooking up with people online, or you're looking for that, or you're, those kind of things, I can say what you're looking for, you'll never find there. There is a better way. It takes longer, it's more delayed gratification, but to find the delight in one person. The greatest lovers in this world are the ones who have been married 20, 30, 40 years. Because they know the person intimately, they know what they like, they're comfortable with each other and they're relaxed, and they've shared enough of life together that their sexual experience is positive and good. That is true intimacy. That is healthy intimacy. But instead, to take a shortcut, and just get involved in a quick hookup is not helping you. It will hurt you long term. And I'm not even beginning to talk about venereal diseases and unwanted pregnancies and broken relationships and ruined lives that come as a result of those things. What God has given you, the ability to be intimate with someone, is a gift. It's not something to be thrown about. If I'm hungry, I can eat a hamburger. But just because I want to have sex doesn't mean I should address it the same way. It's a very different thing. Sex is spiritual. It's a spiritual thing. And so it's been meant to share with one person. Okay? That's my spiel on that. I'm going to ask the basket people to come around. The outies and innies. The outies are the ones you take stuff out of. The innies are the ones you put stuff in. In them, you'll find there's a little response card if you want to be on our email list. Been lots of people joining the email list. I'm also, this spring, we always do open up. I'm looking for some new volunteers. And you say, what a volunteer? We need people to bring food. We need people help on our back desk. We need people to help with different things. And so if you'd be interested in that, then jump in with both feet. I think you've been here probably long enough, or hopefully you've been here long enough that you look around and you say, this is a pretty nice church. I think I could get involved here in that and roll up your sleeves and help. We all do a little, and it makes it so much easier. When the outies have gone around and the innies come, those are the ones you put offerings in or response cards or anything like that. If you're a guest here today, just let the offering pass by. We want our service to be a blessing to you. If you choose to join us and you're part of us, by all means, financially contribute to help do what we do and to reach out, and that's an act of worship. While we're doing that, I've got a quote show coming up behind me. You grab a seat. I had a thought. I don't want to keep you too long. The person was asking a question about the spouse who's spending too much time in that. One thing I forgot to mention is sometimes you're the one that actually has caused that problem. Something for you to consider. Because sometimes your expectations on your spouse, maybe to work such long hours so that you can maintain a certain standard of living, or maybe your expectations on them is that you drive them away by every time they engage with the kids, you take control, and those kind of things. You might be contributing to that problem. I'm just putting that there not to make you feel bad. It just came out of left field, and I'm talking about all this as if the whole problem's the other person. It takes two to dance. Okay? And sometimes the problem might be how you're approaching things, and you're the one that's actually driving them away, or at least you're helping drive them away, okay? By refusing to let go and work as a partnership, okay? So that's something just to keep in mind, to place in there. I was just sitting there and I was thinking, that kind of left field. Okay, a couple things I want us to remember before we go. First one, God made you different, and that's a good thing. Okay, can you repeat that with me? God made you different, and that's a good thing. Next time you want to throttle someone, remember God made them different, and that's a good thing. It's easy to love somebody that loves you back. It's much better, graduate level loving, is loving somebody that is being a turd. Okay? So that's good to remember. God made you different, and that's a good thing. Everybody should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry. You want to repeat that after me? Everyone should be quick to, slow to, and slow to. Good job. You graduate, okay? Go out and live that. I'm going to send you all kinds of articles this week and all that so you can brush up on this. Next week is the lighter topic. We're going to talk about having fun. And there might be some sex in it, okay? So we're going to talk about having fun next week. I know you all want to be here and that. God bless you. May He bless you in your relationships. May He provide you with a dream of true intimacy, and may He go with you. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. We'll see you next week.